over for a promotion. So Neil, surely then we need more diversity training.
No, I think the diversity schemes and quotas in general hold prejudice against people that essentially, for the fact that if you're a person of colour, a different skin colour, the concept that you can only get a job or you have to get something via a leg up through these quotas, through these schemes, I think is totally unfair. And I think it's actually degrading. It's degrading, and if you let me finish, it's degrading and patronising. Because the concept that somebody of colour needs to get a virtual signalling tool to get into a place is absolutely absurd.
They obviously do.
No, they don't. No, they don't. Because if you look at the statistics, if you let me finish, if you let me finish, you'll be able to see that they're not needed. So if we look at the actual stats in terms of people who are doing most successful in this country, right, they're not British white people in terms of proportion. It is British Indians.
Who said that?
And the reason,
can you give me the stat for that?
The stats are so British.
That's actually incorrect.
That's not incorrect. That's not
completely incorrect.
If you do have a
I've got the exact stats for you.
Right.
British Indians are in the most senior higher positions. On
They're
a percentage,
in
in managerial positions they are higher. In professional experience they are higher.
That's a lie.
In professional, you can check it all up. It's all there.
These stats are lying.
That's a lie. And then if you let me carry on, because there's here we go, and here we can do more. Okay, here we can do more. So if we look at the predominantly in this country, who's suffering the most in this country? It is predominantly British white working class kids.
Can I understand your point, but can you let me?
You're going on who's suffering, white working class men. If white working class men are suffering, that's to do with Tory policies, because middle class white men are certainly not at a disadvantage in any working place. And your statistics
they are at a disadvantage.
Middle class white men hold all the top positions in this country.
You're taking a
in all the top countries. 1 in 16 ethnic minorities. Sunil, you haven't let me finish, and you're lying.
Well, I do want to put to you as well.
Ethnic minorities.
One of the issues that was raised in this report, it was the case about the RAF. I'm sure you remember it from 2022.
Yes.
That it found to have unlawfully discriminated then, in that case, against white men in a recruitment drive aimed at boosting diversity. So I suppose then the point I suppose you're making here is that the pendulum is swinging too far the other way.
No, that's not correct. You've gone on one case, you've gone on the RAF, but actually if you look at all organisations, you do realise that organisations, they benefit from diversity initiatives, because actually 2/3 of UK employers have said that, especially Gen Z, they would never apply for an organisation unless they've got DEI initiatives in place. So actually they are beneficial. In the NHS, the biggest employer in this country, 77, nearly 80% of the employees of NHS are women. But guess how many women hold top positions in the NHS? 37%. You've got nearly 80% women, but only 37%. This isn't just about brown or black.
Should we also be concerned about the lack of spending? I mean, we saw in the case of Birmingham City Council, for example, there was a freedom of information request. 114 councils revealed what they'd spent on these sort of roles around equality, diversity, or inclusion. Now, that worked out at £75,000 a year, all right? 0.02% of Birmingham City Council's budget was spent on these roles. 0.02%. In the grand scheme of things, that's a tiny, tiny amount. So surely we should be concerned about that.
We shouldn't be spending any penny on it.
You don't think we
shouldn't spend anything on it?
So therefore...
Let me finish, Narinda. Let me finish. Let me make my point. Don't just shout. So if you look at the percentage, I want to go back to... We want to go back to the white working class people, because that's what we want to talk about.
Boys. That's lack of funding in schools and lack of funding.
Please let me...
So if we look at white working class boys in this country, OK? Even just white working class in general, white working class students. So 82% of this country is white. I know that's not the case in London, Birmingham, Manchester, where many institutions do their studies, but the vast majority of the country is white. If we look at this fact, if we look at the stats, white boys are literacy rates are lower, numeracy rates are lower, and what that means, I'm not talking about funding because that's not a problem. That's not a problem in the British Asian community. That's not a problem in other communities. The reason is so it translates, because if in education standards in white working class are declining, they're less likely to get a professional job. If the vast majority of this country's standards are declining, then that is terrible for black, white and brown people, because what that will mean is if the majority of the country isn't improving their standards, it doesn't matter what your skin colour is.
We are running out of time.
It doesn't matter what your skin colour is.
Narinda and Sunil, always a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming in today. We could have spoken about this for a lot more time, but thank you.
I think there's something in the water today making us have very lively debates. Now, earlier this year, it was reported that thousands of church buildings